Let's go.
It was just hours before kickoff.
Like throw it over, then like follow through, then do this, and don't even look.
And Johnny Stott was going over the game plan.
There's a lot of people going to be watching, huh?
He'd been looking forward to this day.
Yeah, big game, bro. I'm so excited.
Ever since he was a little boy.
I told you we're going to have a inspiring story a little bit. I just wanted to introduce, you guys know this kid right here? His name's Johnny.
It wasn't always a given Johnny would be here.
I had paralyzed muscle throughout my whole body.
Born with a rare genetic mutation.
That's spinal muscular atrophy, lower extremely predominance.
It seemed like a distant dream.
And my struggles have been my legs.
That Johnny would ever take the field.
Being on the sideline managing is the hardest thing ever.
Let alone be the inspiration for younger players.
And I want to be out there hitting people.
Johnny never gave up.
He has maximized everything that he's been given.
So we always call it the Johnny way.
When people say I can't do stuff, that really bugs me.
So that's his thing, is just overcoming and being happy and being grateful for the journey.
On this night,
Yeah, he's never worn a helmet. He's never worn pads.
the journey once again brought Johnny out to Green Canyon's football field.
Johnny Stott.
The high school senior, who had always watched from the sidelines,
Let's go, Joe!
was finally wearing pads.
Starting quarterback
And on the first play,
for the Wolves, number 82, Johnny Stott.
in live action, Johnny was starting at quarterback. It didn't matter that the pass was short. It was how far Johnny had come.
That's a dream. He's our Superman.
No matter what lines up against him in the game of life, Johnny
It was so fun.
is determined to score.
It was the best experience. Oh, it's been my life dream to do it all.
Andrew Adams, KSL 5 News. On the night after Thanksgiving, the roads offered few reasons to be grateful.
This is the worst so far this year.
The snow had been unrelenting,
You don't want to spin out on top, get sideways.
and the conditions on I-80 and Parley's Canyon were unforgiving.
You can't control it, you just deal with it.
Trucker Todd Giles found himself chaining up his semi to survive the slot.
Everybody's crashing, sliding off, so we have to make sure that people are properly equipped to come through this canyon.
The interstate had already seen 2 closures.
We did have a few that did not have the proper equipment that they needed.
Highway Patrol didn't want to see another.
And we kind of forced all the semis into here so that we could get them pushed over and make them chain up.
Learning on the fly isn't easy when the snow is flying.
Some don't know how to use the chains, so they're either having to learn real quick or ask somebody else how to do it.
Troopers are pleading with drivers everywhere to be prepared.
So if they don't do that like we need them to, they're going to have a hard time getting up the mountain.
Black Friday may have been a bear in this canyon,
Maybe it's one of those, do I really need to go? Maybe I should just stay home, you know?
but any road could prove costly.
Just make sure you get home.
It doesn't take a trucker
There's no do-overs on dead.
to make sense of the hazard.
Once it gets away from you, you don't get it back. So you be careful.
They can be intimidating. The black leather, the beards, the tattoos. You know the feeling when you see them. But for everything you notice on the outside,
How you doing?
there you go. Ted Schiffler knows if you spend a few minutes talking to him or any of these bikers,
Almost everyone here is big teddy bears.
you'll find something different on the inside.
We've got that reputation, but we're there for anybody who needs us.
And nothing affects a big bad biker more than hearing of a small innocent child who was hurt. Or in Elizabeth Shelley's case.
got the news that she was found, we knew we had to do something.
That's why several different Utah biker groups met at this Sunset Maverick this morning.
You gonna block for us today? Yes, sir. Thank you very, very much.
Because little Lizzie's funeral was in Logan.
It's a good turnout from OBR.
And they wanted to show the family by wearing her favorite rainbow colors and coming united as one.
You can be proud of this.
I thought maybe OBR and Servant, we'd have 30, 40 bikes.
Instead, they got close to 300.
But that would show the family that we're there and that we love them. And you can see what it turned into. So we're gonna pull out right here, they're gonna block for us.
No way was Lizzie's family alone.
Once we get it out of Sardine, we're gonna have servant riders pull ahead of us.
Of course, most of them didn't know her, but when you have your own kids and grandkids, you can see them in her eyes.
She's our little girl, you know, and just breaks my heart. It does.
So taking time off of work wasn't a big deal to them.
We want this family to know that, you know, people care.
When it comes to supporting a kid who couldn't defend herself, well, maybe that's why even the toughest biker needed sunglasses.
There's just not much we can do besides this.
To hide the one part, the tears, they don't want you to see.
We'll try to help out as much as we can, you know. So that's why we do this.
In Logan, Alex Cabrero, KSL 5 News.
In a place that connects past to present, rests a tale long since buried by dirt and decades.
All I have is stories that my grandfather told me and my mother years ago.
Here lies a mystery mostly forgotten. David Andreessen's visit to the Benjamin Cemetery
Once a year,
brings it all back to the surface.
I understood it was an unmarked grave, but apparently that wasn't the case.
A faded inscription on a headstone
I can't, oh,
tells of a grave injustice.
that is really hard to see. Envy, spite, and lies shall desecrate his name.
His name was Harry Hayes.
He was on waiting for the noose. They already had the rope.
It was 1895. The shores of Utah Lake had given up the bodies of 3 ranch hands. One was Albert Enstrom, Hayes' stepson.
All of the boys had actually been shot in their sleep.
It wasn't long after the Pelican Point murders made headlines that Hayes was identified as the prime suspect.
The stepfather didn't seem worried or anything at all. The land actually belonged to Mrs. Hayes. It had been deeded to her by her family. It was well known that he had a very contentious relationship with his stepson, who was meant to inherit this land. They didn't have anybody else that had a reason to kill these boys, and so very quickly everything started focusing on him.
Hayes was about to meet an outlaw's fate, convicted of the kind of crimes only the most dangerous men in the territory could commit. But detectives never could answer what happened to property missing from the ranch, and Hayes never wavered on his innocence.
He accused somebody by the name of Stevens of having done it. It wasn't until a new sheriff was elected in Lehigh by the name of Stores, and he got interested in the case, and he started doing some more investigating.
That fresh look at the circumstances surrounding the Pelican Point case tied the missing property back to that mysterious drifter named Stevens. Stevens was slowly illuminated as a man of several aliases.
James Weeks. Charles Case.
George H. Wright was his real name.
A plausible talker, sociable personality, attractive, educated.
He was a man who studied to be a lawyer in Michigan, only to find himself down a sinister path in Utah.
He was a marvelous shot with either a rifle or a pistol, and his actions were a practical admission that he was a cattle thief.
By the time the sheriff got onto his trail, he'd already fled to Colorado, where he was suspected of another killing.
The body of W.D. Crampton was found hidden in a manure pile on his own ranch.
It said that the only witness to the murder was the man's dog. 238 caliber bullet holes in the head told that the murder had been committed. It really was the Wild Wild West. He had left a trail of unreputable deeds wherever he went.
Wright also left behind a wife, though, who was granted immunity in exchange for her deposition and testimony.
When I was living at Pondtown, he killed my pet pug dog. I think at that time he intended to kill me.
From that point, Wright was a wanted man. Despite numerous sightings in the years that followed, the mysterious drifter drifted into the fog of history.
I think he was a serial killer is what it sounds like to me.
124 years later, Wright's wrongs will always be remembered here.
I was said to be massacred.
The 3 ranch hands were cousins. They're now buried next to Hayes, who was eventually exonerated.
That's Caroline right there.
Hayes' wife shared the story
with Orrin Terrell in Spanish Fort
for future generations.
That's my grandfather.
This is a different kind of family history.
So it'd be 2 great-grandfathers back.
History shows the truth.
And in the end, the truth come out.
Is never buried long. Andrew Adams, KSL 5 News.
So we're in southeastern Utah, a couple hours from Moab, Utah. We're on the other side of the river, of the Colorado and Green River. We're kind of remote, it's pretty isolated out here. I'm Nathan Martinez, I'm the Assistant Park Manager. We're here at Goblin Valley State Park. It formed through, it used to be an inland sea, and through deposition we had a bunch of layers that were laid down, and some of those layers were hard and some of them were soft. And through erosion, through wind erosion and water erosion, those hard layers didn't erode as quickly and they formed little spires. If you go down to the bottom end of the park, there's a really concentrated section that's kind of like tucked into a corner. So you have to hike a little ways to get down there, but once you like come around a corner, all of a sudden it'll just pop into this really concentrated area of goblins. The nice thing is that they're able to get down in the valley and kind of walk around and walk amongst the goblins and go check them out. So they get a really close-up personal view of it, which is kind of unique in Utah. Yeah, it's a fun place to come and explore and just kind of wander around and hike.